Lads, let's get right into it. A result that none of us seen coming at Hampden. We've had a couple of days to digest. Miff, where are you at on everything?
Hello Tino, hello Paddy, hello James, hello listeners. Personally, and I'm only speaking for myself, still not over it. And neither do I think I should be.
No. You were fizzing on Saturday. Got some vibes in the group chat from you that you weren't best pleased. What's the biggest thing? What's your biggest gripe?
The fact that it was all sitting there in front of us, we knew what we had to do to achieve it, and I don't really think we've turned up. I just think I understand we have no divine right to win everything. I get that, and I congratulate Aberdeen, fair play, game plan worked, and I really don't have an issue with that. I just think to have performed so flatly on such a big occasion, I do think it takes away an element of the mystique that surrounds Rodgers, because I think there have been too many of the bigger games that we've played this year where I don't think we have played particularly well. Okay,
we can get into that, and it's hard to argue with that when you lay down the facts, and we will do so. Paddy, you and I done the post-match yesterday, cathartic if nothing else, good to kind of run through it. I think we came across fairly calm, disappointed absolutely, but kind of covered the various points. I don't know, yes, it was in our gift to go and win that game, absolutely. Sometimes cup finals don't go your way. It was a turgid game of football. Aberdeen dug deep. You just need to take it in the chin sometimes.
You do. You're still allowed to look at, what went wrong for us, and actually pull the mirror up and have a look at the whole setup and how we've played. And I agree with Miff to a certain degree. I think for me, I've spoke quite a lot about how exciting the football was in the first half of the season. I thought we played some brilliant stuff. And it's fell away. It has fell away.
Does it coincide with Kyogo's exit? Because Miff's got a theory on that.
It's a part of it. Because I tell you what, as fans, as the manager, the rest of the players would have been asking, what the hell's going on here?
Aye.
We've weakened ourselves.
Where's this guy that's been the main man for 3 seasons?
Aye.
And if he's gone, who's coming in?
And listen, I know we could go well in the manager here, but if you're going into these games in this second half of the season, important fixtures, and you look at 2 injuries and what it does to that whole squad, you look at Jota and Hatate being out for Saturday and what we've got to bring in, questions need to be asked. Whether it's a signing policy, whether it's the scouting policy that has brought players in for Celtic and not for Brendan Rodgers, whether it's because we've still got a lot of Angie's players, that's what we need to dive into, and we need to think, what's the plan going to be for next season.
James, just in a nutshell, what is, similar question, your biggest issue with Saturday? Is it manager, is it players, is it board? Where are you at?
It's a combination, isn't it? I think we've said this before on the show. I think the board said in January, season's over, lads, don't worry about it, that's it. We're not going to go past Bayern Munich, we're going to win the league, probably win the cup, we've got a treble, great. And when you set that kind of tone, that kind of culture, it tells everyone not to be bang on their tools at work, So
you mean specifically by not replacing Kyogo, that's their actions are speaking those words?
Yeah, I don't think Rodgers wasn't part of that. I think he'd been offered something. Rodgers said, no, I'd rather wait for the quality, which is fair enough, but why they're not offering him the quality? And also, if they are offering the quality, that player better be signed next week, because they've had all that time to sort that out. But my overarching thing is, and we get to these things and manager and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of players there on Saturday have said to Rodgers, I'm not good enough mentally to play for Celtic. That's where I'm at.
Hard to argue. Specifically on the game then, did he get the lineup wrong first and foremost? And even more specifically, should James Forrest, the informed guy, the guy who's brimming with confidence at the peak of his powers, getting all the plaudits and rightly so, should he have started, Paddy, instead of a Nicholas Kuhn who's well off the boil?
I think for me, over the course of the season, it's a reward for the players that have got you to that point. That's the only way I can kind of see the fact that Kuhn.
I think that happened.
Aye.
Should that happen?
Well, yes, because they've got us to that point. They should be able to take the weight on the shoulders. The manager has had that belief in them from the beginning of the season. We can't think about what that does on the other side. If you drop them, you're then hoping that they come on as that impact player. James Forrest is in a different part of his career. He's well aware that, whether I start, whether I come on, I've got a job to do, and I'm happy to be a part of this setup. Nicholas Kuhn should be starting that game. He should be. And
on talent.
On talent, absolutely. And on the season he's had. Has the form been poor for the last 2-3 months? Absolutely. But for me, you need your best players. You need to be able to see how are these people going to react under this pressure. And I think that, for me, I think he got the starting line up right.
Yeah, I mean, me and Bridled on the pre-match show on Friday and predicted it, and it's no crystal ball stuff, but predicted that would be the lineup, given that's what started the previous week. But that, I suppose that in itself is the point that players, they kind of know they're starting. There doesn't seem any great jeopardy for having a bad game. I thought Bernardo wasn't great last week, but he gets the nod again. But mostly because there's no alternative. Hatate's out, McCowan's not really doing it at this moment in time. And complacency kills Celtic. I'll go back to, we asked Paddy in our weekly show a couple of months ago now, what's going to stop Celtic winning the treble? And he says Celtic are the only thing that can stop us win the treble. And I say that with all respect to Aberdeen, but if Celtic, or the right version of Celtic, turn up on Saturday, you're good to go.
Aye.
But we didn't, Muff.
No, we didn't. And I would actually agree with Paddy in terms of the starting lineup. I just don't think you can account for how poorly Kuhn played.
Yep.
I mean, it was worse than no being there. It was again, I think Yang's performance deteriorated when he switched wings, which was unfortunate. I don't think he wasn't doing too badly on the left. Just when he went to the right, he totally disintegrated. But in terms of Kuhn, you need to remember, against the same opposition, Kuhn has absolutely ripped them apart, albeit Aberdeen played in a different way. However, Kuhn has also been very, very handy, and his output has been excellent when playing at Celtic Park against teams playing the way that Aberdeen did. So I just don't really see. You mentioned the start of the season, Paddy, and the electric football we were playing. Part of my theory around that is we have missed Kyogo's movement within that sort of structure. But I would also say whatever happened in January around Kuhn and his future and the potential move and all those different things, that's clearly affected his form as well.
Leipzig to chat.
So with those two different sort of factors built within that, it's probably no surprise. Kyogo's removal for the squad, or Kyogo's sale, Kuhn's drop off with his head being turned. He's only human, it does happen. That's two pretty big factors. Added to that, you've got Jota then coming back in, taking a while to get going. There's loads of wee things within there. People will turn around and say Maeda massively stepped up in Kyogo's absence and scored a huge amount of goals. Absolutely correct to point that out, but it's the overall system you're thinking of, and it just felt to me things just weren't quite right since probably around January time. Just to your eyes when you're watching it, and how fluid the football is. At the start of the season it was amazing, and the way they were ripped Aberdeen apart. Was it the League Cup? Was that semi-final? League Cup semi-final. Was just, that was as good as it gets.
You mentioned Maeda, who absolutely stepped up massively and rightly picked up all the awards, and credit to him for that. He scored 0 goals in Celtic's last 6 games, having scored 5 and 5 before that, and everything else. What was it, 33, 34 goals of the season? Great season all round, but he went into the final off form, and Nicholas Kuhn was off for him. James Forrest was in for him, and you could debate various others. And I think you do need to have this meritocracy. I understand rewarding the players for getting you there, but Brendan Rodgers has shown in the past that he can be ruthless when he needs to be. And I think a cup final where there's a treble on the line is when you need to be, James. I think that's when you need to say, guys, and you're off it. There's maybe some family stuff going on. I know they've had a wee one and things going on there. Put him on the bench, what a sub to have, and go away Forrest, Kuhn and Ida or something like that. You need to make those tough calls, and I think he was too loyal to the guys that have been here all season long. Yeah,
he doesn't strike me as the most sentimental of managers, but then McGregor not getting on the bench after his Aberdeen performance, last week, against St Mirren, that seemed a bit sentimental to make sure guys were on the pitch, togged out, having played the game, picking up the trophy and all that stuff. That's sentimental for me, and I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in trophies. So I think there's a bit of it, but I would take Dyson out of it because
he looked knackered.
But that is it.
So don't play him.
He was physically exhausted. There was one, I think it might even been in extra time if it wasn't. It was at the tail end of the 90, and there was a ball out to the shy line, and he went to go for it, and it was about 10th of Dyson speed. And you just thought, he's just gassed. Not gassed for the game, gassed for the season.
And he took a heavy impact from a challenge early in the game, and I don't discount that, but he just looked tired, running on fumes.
I thought Kenny should have been on much quicker. But
having to call upon Johnny Kenny to save the day tells you exactly where we're at.
That's the Kyogo move. That's
it. You've gone from Kyogo can't stop scoring,
All brings you back to the same thing.
experienced international striker. And Johnny Kenny will have been buzzing to go into that park, but it was probably unfair, Paddy, to ask him to be the saviour.
It's unfair, and we said this yesterday in the post-match day. I think he would have been all over the chance, though. He would have wanted to try and make his mark in a big game. But I know where you're coming from with Maeda. He did look off it. Makes you question, with what we've got at our disposal at Celtic, if we've got sports science
Tech-wise,
X, Y and Z,
they'll know exactly
ready who to go, how long are you going to get out this player?
Yep.
Then that's where that needs to be called into question as well.
Yep.
I'm a big believer that the team that started deserved to start, and I think for me the reason for that is because of what they've done in the season going up to this point. And listen, it's not great losing a final. It's an experience that not a lot of us are used to in a long time at the moment as a Celtic fan. But what we've got to remember is as well, it's another double. So the players that have brought us to that point of the season, they're the ones that were the majority of the players that were starting, obviously without Hatate and without Jota coming in at the second half of the season as well. We can't take these things for granted. We do need our strongest teams out there, and I get James Forrest he's been really, really strong. Are we going to get an hour out?
But he could have done that hammy in the first 10 minutes.
Not exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Then
you're trying to bring on a Kuhn that's not feeling a bit out,
And these are all the big calls that managers make, and some they'll get right, some they'll get wrong, and everything we always do is always with the benefit of hindsight, but some of them just seem like calls that could have been made differently.
Some set of stones on Johnny Kenny for his penalty as well.
Good penalty.
Fantastic.
Yeah, credit to him for that. Just in terms of talking about Maeda, talking about Kuhn, talking about various others, why do we think that just so many of the big players, the guys that we've trusted all season, didn't turn up? And actually, it's easier to look at the guys who got past marks, and I'd say CCV probably. Others have debated Schmeichel and Taylor, and you can argue the toss on those ones if you like. But just say there was those three. That's a whole host of other guys, 8, 9, 10 other players that haven't turned up on the game that really means the most. The league's been sewn up for some time. The League Cup was done in December. This is it. This is what Celtic have been building for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's been on the horizon. We get to the big crescendo, the finale of the season, and yes, we won the double, but it doesn't feel like that because you lose that final game. Why could we not get up for this final game?
There's a bit of me that's looking at the second half of the season, 2025 in particular, of course. I think when you look at some of the big games that we've had, the 2 Bayern games, we were so proud of the performance. At the end of it all, we thought we've given everything we could give there, and we've not got by what we needed to do. But you could hold your head up high at the end of it. The games against Rangers, really poor.
Woeful.
Really poor. And Ibrox, a bit better, but not the dominating side that we've seen from Celtic in a long time. And from even that cup final back in December, I wouldn't say that they were better, but we weren't great on the day. I would definitely say that we played into their game plan. And I find that that's what seems to be happening a lot more. When we are favourites, I think it weighs on too many of our players. I think there's a few in our team that it's too much for them, where it's different when it's in Europe and you're the underdog and you're up against it. Pressure's off, in a sense.
Yeah, and for the want of repeating myself, we say a lot, it's not about talent. Everyone that's part of Celtic is talented in their own ways, but it's the mentality that gets you over the line, and it feels that too many, and guys that you can usually trust, James, just fell short. And you can include the penalties in that as well. Penalties are a big psychological thing.
I think the manager's got a part in that. His obsession with possession, there you go, is something that when players are just keeping the ball and making zero penetration, that starts to wear on you emotionally, mentally rather, and it's constantly coming up against a brick wall. There's no mercurial genius there in that squad, I would say.
Somebody says we're missing a Matt O'Reilly shaped hole in the midfield.
Yeah, I could understand that.
I don't know if he turns that game around. He never took control enough games for me, O'Reilly. So I
Didn't he
don't know.
last season? He was the match winner on the last season.
I don't know if he's well, that's another debate, I suppose. But I think that was really missing when you've got that, back five, two banks of five really is what you're up against. You do need somebody that can unpick things. I thought he was really, really poor. He didn't get a lot of service, but the service he did get, he was utterly wasteful.
Yeah.
Miff made a point, just before he came on there. His first touch was so poor, he was having to go 3-4 yards towards his own goal before he could turn and start doing something towards Aberdeen's goal. And that that time costs you.
Mhm.
And again, it's another brick wall, and you have to change your point of attack and restart and all that stuff. I think the players just emotionally exhausted, mentally exhausted.
Yeah, and you do miss a Jota and a Rio Hatate from that mercurial point of view, the guys that would unlock defences. And Adam Ida's defence, and Paddy and myself covered this, and we've done 40 minutes yesterday post-match, if anyone wants to check it out. When did Celtic get to the byline and put it across the face of the goal for Adam Ida? Just from a pure striker point of view, I don't think he get any service. So what does that say? That not only we're not scoring against Aberdeen, but barely even creating chances.
I think it may be that just how defensive Aberdeen were was a bit of a shock to the players and the manager. And
Should it have been?
It shouldn't have been, no.
Well, no, I'm not wanting to blow my own
So-
trumpet, but I think I called it. But
So-
moving on for that,
But surely all week, Rodgers should be setting the players up.
Different
to go, it's
scenarios.
Probably, well, maybe some other scenarios, but definitely that one. That's most likely.
I just think, for whatever reason, you talk about the players just couldn't go to the well that one more time for the season. I think there's a myriad of different circumstances that contribute to that. I don't think it's just any one thing. But I also think the manager looked a bit out of ideas, and ultimately, we're talking about the starting lineup. There wasn't really much alternative as to what he could do. So that again takes us back to the depth in the squad and what we think we have compared to what we actually have. And ultimately, we've no divine right to win these games of football.
No.
We've turned up. We've probably went through the motions a bit. Fans, players, management, everybody expecting to turn up for a routine victory and celebrate a treble, and it's not happened. When that doesn't happen, it's then a case that's why we exist, because we're sitting here discussing these things. I don't think it's necessarily just down to any one thing. Probably summed up by the fact that a guy like Callum McGregor steps up, take the first penalty and misses. That just kind of pretty much sums up the day. So the penalties are the penalties. The game or the cup was lost by the fact that we didn't show enough creativity and spark in the 90 or 120 minutes, to cut Aberdeen open, and that's quite telling on us, because we are normally a team that does that, without even really needing to think about it. So credit to Aberdeen for their tactics, but also just everything. Well, not everything that could have went wrong did go wrong, but just that flatness was just something that pervaded through the full day. I thought when James had come on, actually we looked more likely to score a second goal. And there was a few, we looked like we were actually going to get behind them, and another goal would have killed it. But then it was almost like we just ran out of steam.
Ran out of steam and ran out of ideas. Paddy, in a kind of strange way though, and I'm trying to find the positives here, does the loss sometimes help you kind of press reset? Sometimes it's not the worst thing to happen, and we can roll out the cliches here, but they say you learn much more about yourself in defeat than in victory. If Celtic win that game as well expected them to do so, you sail into the summer, you maybe only make a couple of tweaks from a manager and playing point of view, and maybe even fans we think we're better than what we are. It's maybe a timely reminder, a timely reset that there's work to be done, and maybe we come back more motivated to correct the wrongs.
Yeah, I'm not getting the shark out yet in terms of that, but no, I think we're maybe talking not so long ago about, is this cycle starting to kind of come to its end?
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking to bring in a bit of fresh blood for next season?
This is mostly Ange's team, isn't it?
Well, but I think for any manager coming in, they're going to pick up players for the previous setup, and they're going to need them.
I know.
I look at Rodgers when he first came in. A lot of the players in that team was Ronnie Dyla's team. He took them to another level.
Aye.
But I think 2 years on, I just think there's not enough freshness about it. Not enough of Rodgers' signings, if they are his signings, have added enough to the squad.
This makes me ask the question of, when you look at the transfer window of January last year, when we bring in Adam Ida and Nicholas Kuhn, and we're linked with 4 or 5 different players. Apparently there was a list given by Rodgers. Celtic have come back and said we've got nowhere near any of those players he's want, and I think he's said no to a lot, and I think he's put the foot down this term. I really do.
Don't give me the 5th, 6th choice, give me first or second or none.
Absolutely. Now, the flip side of that is that we can't hang about. We can't hang about. We need to be able to give some of these players a risk if he's not getting the targets he wants. But it's a tough one for the manager in that sense, because if he's putting the demand in for a certain type of player and he's not getting it, we're not going to progress. And I'm surprised he's not left in that matter, because I think that's got to be the big thing for him, is that he has come back on a promise. Now, he has said he was going to bring us progress in Europe. He's done that.
Yeah.
He's done that.
Yeah.
But where do we go now? What's the next step? That's the big thing. I think it's going to be an interesting summer. We spoke about this yesterday. I think they really need to highlight what Brendan Rodgers' future is going to be first before we start getting into this transfer market.
I think that's crucial. So I think a couple of things there. Brendan Rodgers, I think, second time around is more understanding of Celtic's model. Whereas first time around, he'd made his demands. It was clear there was a disconnect between him and some members of the board, and he never got what he wanted, and eventually moves on. I think now he's a different character. He's a bit more mature as a manager. He's got less of this burning ambition to go and prove himself to the doubters down south. And I think he's quite content in life in Scotland, family-wise and whatever. So I think he's less inclined to rock the boat. But that shouldn't mean that if he doesn't get targets A and B or even target C, you just say, I won't take anybody. You need that freshness, and the squad needs to evolve. And I think potentially there is a staleness. And I'd ask you lads a question just now, and it's not to sound dramatic or just for a line on a podcast, but is this side under Rodgers at about a crossroads right now? We could go one way or another. You could kick on from the Bayern Munich performance, if not the result, or you could just stagnate and maybe do more of the same and sometimes qualify in Europe and sometimes not. What do you think?
I think that's exactly where we are. And I think it's something we've kind of raised in previous weeks, just around what the scenario is. Who's then going to be responsible for buying the players? Is that Rodgers just buying players for him to then eventually exit?
Mm-hmm.
Are players going to come on the basis that
will they commit if the manager's not committing?
That's what I mean. If he's their man. For me, if you're taking the positives out of the situation, firstly, it's timing. You look at what's happened down in England. If the Scottish Cup had been played the same weekend as the FA Cup, you'd have been beat, but then you'd have been celebrating James's win at the weekend, and away you go.
I don't think that covers it.
I know it does to cover it, but it's at the same time. This is a sort of post-mortem into it. And the positive for me would be it's now showed undeniably that the strength of our squad, the makeup of our squad, and the characters within our squad, we don't have anywhere near enough depth that we would like to have, and I think that the manager would like to have. And I don't really think now, and I include Rodgers' uncertainty within that, I don't think there's any excuse now for not going and providing the squad with the depth that it needs, whether that be for Rodgers or anyone else.
Aye. Yeah. I know there's a couple of injuries, but if you're calling on Johnny Kenny and Sloop to save the day, and that's what it was last throw of the dice
Schluppmeister almost done it.
I know
he did. Great strike. But then you finish the game with Greg Taylor as a midfielder. It's all over the place. It's just a wee bit like, let's just throw the kitchen sink and hope for the best. Yeah. That can't be the way. And it's funny because Brendan Rodgers is a man who likes to be fully in control. His system dictates that Celtic's players just don't play the risky pass. They play percentage football, and unless it's 100% safe to make that pass, they won't make it, which I really don't like. It's hard to argue with the success. But sometimes that we've been spoiled by Ange Ball, where they'll be encouraged to take that risk. We've gone from that to a completely different option, and there's
a middle ground on that, where particularly when you're up against two banks of five, you need to adapt and say, right, take some risk in the passing. But I think there's a couple of things. It's a perennial challenge at Celtic in terms of getting that depth, because you are saying to somebody, come on along and sign, you're not going to play any football.
Well, or prove me wrong and play.
I know, but it's hard trying to sell that when you get somebody. The left back, there's a challenge here, not in the Taylor's chat, but if we need to sign left back cover and you're 100% going to be playing second fiddle to Tierney, I think you'll still play plenty of football. But I think the overarching thing is, since Bruges, there's a template for how to at least stop us winning, if not beat us. So we've been found out to a degree. It happens to all managers, all teams. I think there's an evolution required in Rodgers' own thinking as to how he approaches, and it is adapting to a wee bit more, not Ange stuff, not cavalier, but playing, higher risk percentage balls when the opportunity dictates.
We are quite predictable, but the teams know how we set up and how we play. But by and large, they've not been able to live with us because we do it so effectively. But on Saturday, you turn up, people know how we're going to set up and how we're going to play, but we didn't do it effectively.
You've got about 8 or 10 games this season where teams have, when it doesn't matter how you play, we'll set up in a way that will nullify you.
What comes with that though, and I think you're spot on in terms of how we're going to set up and what's different from it. I almost said when you look at the Rangers games, they wanted us to come at them. They wanted us to try and break us down the way they did in the hope of a counter, and they got their success at Celtic Park. The thing with this team, on Saturday was they were given so much of the ball. Aberdeen were well set up and where they were. We just did not move it quick enough. We did not move it quick enough. And that, what can the manager do in that? You know, like you've got 3 midfielders there that really just need to take the game in the scruff of the neck, bring us up further up in the park. Even though, look at the percentage we had of possession. We were talking about it yesterday in the post-match. Can't really remember us getting into the final third as much.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Did he get anything to feed off it?
No. Listen, I think it needed to be a lot quicker. It needed to be a lot sharper. And I think there was too many in that team that thought they were going to rock up and win on Saturday quite easily.
Yeah.
So no, I think, listen, we're talking obviously about players as well that we were happy to see. Obviously, Kieran Tierney coming in. It's clearing up the left-back situation a little bit. We've got the question about a left-sided centre-half for next season. I'm also thinking about some of the guys that have played under Ange and have been here for a while now. I was thinking about it after the show yesterday, Tino. Are Carter Vickers, Alistair Johnson, Rio Hatate, Dyson Maeda, they want to hang about for another season as well? You know, like this could be a massive change this summer.
You could fully understand if those players that you mentioned are just bored of the challenge.
That's what I'm starting to think with a lot of them.
See, if you look at a CCV, he's probably got about 8, 9, 10 trophies in the bag, something like that, in the fairly short time he's been at Celtic. All those guys that signed under Ange season 1, Rio came in the January, Dyson Maeda, Alistair Johnson came in a wee bit later on. All these guys, I talk often, and it's not an excuse for these players, but human nature is human nature. Aye. It's a very real thing, and you can understand if CCV might wake up this morning and go, I fancy something different. Maybe I'll go out to the States, or maybe I'll get into Europe and experience something different at 27, 28 years of age. And if any of them thought that way, you couldn't fault them. That's just life.
True, but I'd rather they felt like that on the Sunday having lifted the cup rather than felt like that before the game. They could have maybe waited for a day.
I think
feelings are feelings, man.
What I would say on that is that, like, and I'm not saying this is the sole reason we get beaten Saturday, we need that 100% commitment switched on in every game. But they are human.
Hunger is a thing. Ange wanted to sign hungry players, whether they had yet to win anything in their career, or if they'd faced adversity, or if they were 27 and had been cast aside by their previous club, something like that. You need guys to have a something behind them. You know, everyone knows the story about Andy Robertson, get let go at Celtic as a kid, then had to make his way back into football through Queen's Park, Dundee United, Hull City and Liverpool. But he had that burning desire to prove people wrong, that he had something to offer, and he's lifting his latest Premier League at the weekend there.
Tell me this, who's hungrier, the 11 that started at Pittodrie and beat Aberdeen 5-1, or the 11 that started on Saturday?
Yeah, it's a good debate.
The hunger in your second string there.
Jamesy Forrest looks hungry and motivated because he knows that every game, every season could be his last at this moment. That's how he's thinking. Sean McArdle wants to prove himself. Other guys you could debate the Sinisalo. Maybe, he probably got it right by picking Schmeichel, I think, overall. But there is an argument for Sinisalo and, guys like that playing a part. I just think that hunger and that drive that was just seriously missing on Saturday, we're struggling to create that.
If the team is an image of their manager, is there maybe a wee bit of that?
Is he one too much? Is he complacent?
Not necessarily. I thought he was quite
he's annoyed.
Quite low key after the game.
Low key annoyed.
I get why though. I think probably the fact that McGregor and Johnson, who have been two of his warriors, have been the ones that have missed the penalties, he's probably thought best about getting in 2-footed with the Tom Ford zone.
I think Johnson missed to make McGregor feel better.
Possibly.
He's that kind of teammate. He would do something player.
Like that. But he'll have been seething. But Rodgers himself carries a lot of confidence, bordering on arrogance. And there maybe was a bit of that within the team where they just felt it was a completely foregone conclusion.
But I'm all right with that though. You just need to back it up.
Yeah.
You need to show why you feel that way.
And for whatever reason we've not done it. The fact remains is that it's still been a massively successful season.
Yeah.
And this episode is the post-mortem to the events of Saturday and the defeat. So when we swing round and we do next week's, if there is a next week, we can talk about that.
TBC.
Aye.
We're not disbanding.
We've got Kieran Tierney coming in. That there will be change, there will be improvements in the squad. We hope the good doctor's going to produce a good.
He's currently signed 2 Celtic youth players.
Aye. So
outstanding.
And by the way, I would also add into that. I mean, and I might be getting way ahead of myself here, but from what the small glimpses I've seen of young McArdle, that is something to be massively excited about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If somebody can approach the ball the way that he does and manipulate it the way that he does, that just play him as often as you can.
What percentage that out of him?
Rodgers will.
Hey,
Get that ball pass to the side.
There is lots to be excited about, McArdle and otherwise, and we'll tie it up. We'll do. Some folks have been asking when the next Bag of Cans episode is, so we'll catch that. We'll do that sometime in June.
Good job it wasn't tonight.
Very good job for you. That might have been your last.
off to the Villa.
We'll do an end of season review some point over the next couple of weeks, couple of drinks, and we'll enjoy that because of course, as it's been a successful season, it's a double now for Celtic. Brendan Rodgers picking up 4 of the 6 domestic trophies since his return. Europe, by and large, was very good. You obviously got to account for the heavy defeat at Dortmund, but over the piece,
That was a springboard, though.
yeah, good campaign all round and very credible performance against Bayern Munich. So lots to be positive about. But you're rightly saying, if we're in the here and now, and we've got to digest what all played out. Listen, we'll move on. There's a few other points to catch for tonight's episode, but just generally your own final thoughts and reflections on the cup final defeat.
Well, it's a really sore one just because of where we thought it was going to take us. However, it's also a stark reminder of how hard it is to do these things and win these things and constantly win these trophies, because in cup football it only takes, one bad game and you're out.
Yep.
The fact that we've managed to avoid defeat in so many cup games, you look back and as much as it stings, I think it's also a timely reminder of just how much we've achieved.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and it's important to keep that mindful. James?
No, too many crucial games lost this season. Something's not right and it needs fixed quickly.
You'll have seen the stat. We only lost 2 games in the calendar year 2024. I think now it's like 6 or 7. We've lost to Aston Villa, maybe expected. We've lost to Bayern Munich, yeah, okay. We've lost to Hibs, we've lost to St Johnstone, we've lost twice to Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
7.
I'm running out of fingers, 6, 7, something like that. That's a pattern.
That's a pattern.
And that's concerning. Barry, your own final reflections on Saturday?
I was okay in January about the Celtic Kyogo. I kind of looked at who we had in the team and I thought we still had enough. I kind of gave the board a bit of the benefit of the doubt and not want to spend a lot of money on a player after spending so much money in Adamida last summer. It's poor management. It's poor management from the board and not having a striker to replace Kyogo. It's come back to bite us, in my opinion.
And it didn't have to be £7 million Matthias Kviesgaarden, if that's the guy I'm talking about. It could have been a £3-4-5 million striker.
Simon Murray.
You go out,
You could have done worse.
on the last couple of days of January, if you realise you're not getting who you're after, you need to have your backup loan. Somebody is not playing the football they want to play, as much football as they want to play, and you get them in for the 4 or 5 months. That's it.
It's came back to bite us. That's how
Yeah, and this is, I've given the good doctor Paul Tisdale a bit of a pass because he's,
How would you know?
well, that's it, but he's not long in the door and he's not had full windows to work. But actually, in January, he could have been the guy that said, well, I've got the data and the knowledge and the contacts. You need a striker, okay, you can't get those guys, but if it falls through, we'll get you somebody. Don't worry, we're not going to leave you the last few months of the season with no genuine options. And that's what we ended up with. But listen, we'll move on from now. As I say, there'll be lots more postmortems doing the rounds across the board, and we'll touch on various bits and bobs in that end of season review whenever we get that penciled in. Some positive news last night in terms of the seeding for the Champions League draw. Forget the name of the team now. The team in Croatia that everyone was supporting all of a sudden.
Rijeka.
I thought you were going to talk about Ross Doohan.
No, we'll get to him.
No, we'll get him on the 1st of September when he's our main signing in the summer.
That's it. But Rijeka won. We'll just go with Rijeka. They won the Croatian League, which means whatever it all plays out as, Celtic are going to be seeded into that draw, which is big news. Means you avoid kind of various, not so much big hitters, but teams like Copenhagen, Bodo Glimt, and other teams that would have been trickier. You could now come up against the likes of FC Bâle, Sturm Graz, Steaua Bucharest, Lech Poznan, and Slovan Bratislava. Teams that you should be taken care of, should be. And if you don't deserve the Champions League. So let's go with that. Those games, so that'll be our first, kind of real test of the season. I suppose it probably takes place after the league campaign kicks off. I think the
final weeks of August.
Exactly that. It's the last week or two in August, home and away ties. The draw takes place on the 4th of August. So we'll keep close eyes on that. But Paddy, all of a sudden, that's now got to be the focus, hasn't it? You've got your signings and everything else, but from a club point of view, Tisdale and Rodgers and whoever works in that kind of side of things, you've got to be signing players with that in mind, because that's a huge target again.
And yeah, massive target. Interestingly enough, one of the boys asked where we're going for pre-season this summer. I know obviously we've got Cork and Newcastle United lined up, but they've not announced anything. They've not announced a tour or anything like that, which is I'm finding a bit interesting, because for me, the target's not to sign players before the start of the Champions League qualifiers. It's before that tour starts. I think that's massive.
Yeah.
And that's where we fell short. You could debate that Engels and Ida and various others would have properly benefited
We
from
sit in our hands too long. We need to act quick.
Agreed.
My prediction for the starting back four of that qualifier
Don't
is
say it. Near
Ralston,
Beaton back on loan.
Ralston,
Effie Ambrose.
Trusty, Scales, Taylor.
No.
He'll hang about.
Do you know the qualifier? You know, their coefficient monkey friends haven't done enough to get us straight into the Champions League this year, but the qualifier's probably done us a favour in terms of, see, if we are straight in the groups, the board like,
I know.
just leave it, lads.
I know. We're fine. We're fine.
The semis.
It kind of keeps you honest, doesn't it? I mean, it means you're going to kind of do the work, because that becomes, I don't know, a £50 million playoff game. It's a game over 2 legs for ballpark those kind of numbers.
That'll get big Pedro's attention. You said what?
So hopefully we get that right. You mentioned that my fella on in terms of KT. He signed off his time at Arsenal perfectly. In the penultimate game of the season, he got a great reception at the Emirates, and then he scored a goal in a man of the match type performance on Sunday there as they beat Southampton 2-1. There's no other way to dress up, James. That is an exceptional signing for Celtic, and it's one to be excited about.
Ridiculous. And it's...
We've no right to get a player like that.
Aye. First and foremost, delighted for him to get the goal and he sign off, and you know the fans gave him the adulation.
Nice finish.
Really nice
Cross
finish.
At the front post.
So I stuck a highlights on saying, I wonder where this header's coming from. It's no.
Was he right foot?
Right foot.
Yeah, some nice work.
Cross the centre half.
And through Celtic absence of PR style, we put out at the back end another press release, maybe about the numbers, about the annual figures or something.
Don't tell anyone we've seen KT.
Rogers couldn't help himself.
I dropped it in.
Drop it in there.
I think he was trying to make more of it than the board were, because they just literally came out in a paragraph, document.
I wonder, was it agreed though? Maybe the player and his agent said, listen, he wants to see out his Arsenal time. You don't know how these things go now though. As in right now we need to start making noise.
Yeah, but you can still be letting the fans get excited about it and be subtle about it, or whatever, you know, a throwback to Dial days or Rodgers' first term days. You can certainly put out that this guy's coming back and it's something to be excited about. It's phenomenal. You're just saying there, like, there's the back four. No, it isn't he? Because KT's in.
I will. KT will be there. KT will be there.
So
he might be injured.
You might have seen some comments. Mikel Arteta described him as a really special character and a joy to work with. And present company aside, he's one of the best things to come out of Motherwell I've ever heard of.
He's just he's fantastic. A great ambassador for the club, and also a very, very, very good footballer. And someone that has shown a bit of versatility when playing for Scotland as well, so he can play in different systems.
He played there for Arsenal.
So just a player of his quality coming into the squad just upgrades it immediately.
And the thing as well, Paddy, it sets the tone for the level of signings that we want to encourage, aside from KT, but also he massively improves standards with those around him. And the good thing is now, at what is he, 27? Coming back at this age and stage in his career, I don't think he'll be shy about pulling guys up on day one if they're not pulling their weight, and rightfully so. You need these leaders and these strong characters, and he's all of that.
He's a winner. He's a winner, and I think barring some injuries, he would have probably done Arsenal the world of good if he was able to stay fit in his full time there. I think he's a huge step in the right direction. I also don't think he arrives here without having those promises for a manager and from the board of what's the thinking for Celtic? What are we looking at after that Champions League campaign there? There's a lot of excitement now in terms of what we do in Europe going forward. Yeah. We do have a difficult qualifier, absolutely. But hopefully it is the start of things to come with KT coming back. And I just think having another leader in the changing room is absolutely brilliant for us.
Absolutely. Miff, what Celtic give with one hand, they're taking away with the other with the imminent departure of Scott Bain. Sad day for Bainiacs all across the country. What are you saying?
That I believe there is access to a Bainiac support group. So please DM Tino if MD's needing that information. I'm just looking up there and seeing their wee faces. It's
it's hard to watch.
It's hard.
We can move on to the next image.
It's hard. I feel
the next image is no better.
As much as I'm
like
that knows so much. That knows so much.
Just turn the TV off.
Sympathy remains. Then I don't put that next.
Scott Bain with 71 appearances in 6 years. Listen, he came and done his job. Yep. People slay him. Third choice goalie's not a glamorous role as such. You need to be that guy who knows he's rarely going to be called upon.
He had a fantastic game in the 3-2 game at Ibrox. He was really
He
good
did,
in that game.
Great game.
And produced some excellent saves, but was also responsible for some comical goals going in as well. But I am a dyed-in-the-wool Bainiac, so I will be very, very sorry to see him go.
Yeah, and James, you referenced earlier on that Paul Tisdale has been busy scouting ex-Celtic Kieran Tierney and now ex-Celtic Ross Doohan, who's been at Aberdeen of recent. I've no qualms about that. I mean, certainly no qualms about the KT signing. No qualms about the Doohan signing, but there needs to be more beyond that. But what do you think of Doohan?
It's a clever signing.
From the
Doohan, of course. He was club trained, nation trained, all that.
He ticks 2 boxes in the squad selection, so it gives us another.
Is he any good in goals though?
Hope so. I don't know for Aberdeen
box
this season.
number 1. I know.
Doesn't really need gloves. But a lot of work to be done. I don't know if signings of Tierney's level will continue to come in the door this summer. I worry
They have to.
I worry that certainly Ida and latterly Engels as well haven't shown the board that spending more gets you more, and that's always that's not my attitude. I would say maintain that,
but also
their attitude is, Barkas, we spent 5-6 million, it was a disaster, so we'll not do that again.
But the learning point for the board though is that look how
do it quicker.
Do it quicker. Look how poor the negotiations were in both.
Awful. I still ask, who is doing that? Have we employed anyone yet to do that? There's experienced people out there that, in the world of football, in the grand scheme of football, what things cost, will be relatively inexperienced and will make and save you millions. I would just love to hear something from Celtic that we're doing something in that regard.
Yeah, but Celtic always keep their cards close to their chest in that regard. There's chat. I seen Liam Scales, Paddy, he was quoted earlier on talking about some of the kind of final messaging from the manager post-match. The dressing room must have been on the floor. They must have been pretty gutted, and we've got the picture on screen of the boys at the penalty, and there'll be some really, really disappointed players there. But the message was that he wanted them to stay together as a group for that kind of last night of the season. I presume they were going back to Celtic Park, walking past the big screen on the Celtic way, which must have been sore, to be fair. And I hope they had a bit of time together and stuff. You can understand some guys might have just went up the road or whatever. But Scales did say, Paddy, amongst those quotes, that he says, we know a lot of these guys will move on and a lot of new players come in. And for some guys, for a variety of reasons, that's it at Celtic. Their time is up, and it's going to be a very different squad. It should be a very different squad by the time these qualifiers and others come around. Yeah,
I do think we will see a bit of a change this summer, and I know where you're coming from in terms of the money spent last season. Engels, there's a player there. He needs to up it for next season. He really does. I think in the last couple of months it's not been as defendable for me. I think when you look at Adam Ida, the jury's out there for me. I'm not too happy with him. I don't think it's fair to hit him with a 9 million tag, but that's what Celtic get suckered into because they sat in their hands.
Even if it was 6, you'd be going, what's going on here?
We're saying the same about Austin Trusty as well, aren't we? Is Trusty at that level.
He's 6.
So there is definite learnings again for the board in these moments, in these transfer moments. But we got caught out 4 years ago when it was the transition from Neil Lennon to John Kennedy caretaker to Ange Postecoglou, that the team was non-existent. We had to sign players. We had to use a lot of youth players. Celtic can't allow anything like that to happen against it. This is a big summer. Yeah.
Do you know, when you reflect on it, Ange performed a bit of a miracle that season. See, when you remember,
it's incredible.
Well, we just had to open the checkbook.
But he also played a lot of youth players.
A big part in it.
Up until December, though, I remember that St Mirren game. Owen Moffat starting.
But COVID was all.
I know, but it's still like we were nowhere near a strong team.
Joey Dawson, No, there is no doubt, Miff, there's work to be done, and we touched on it earlier on, but there's work to be done in terms of bringing in, fresh players, KT and others. You also need to somehow re-energise the squad, and as I say, it kind of touches on that point about guys that they've gone to the bell so many times for Celtic. You need to get them motivated to do so again. That's just life at Celtic. You can't afford not to.
No, listen, nobody will be hurting more than the players because they're winners. They are winners. They're used to winning. Managers used to winning. So this will be used as fuel. So in many ways, in the long run, it'll be no bad thing. But it'll only be a good thing if it's backed up. If it's backed up by the surgery being done in the squad that needs done. And that's not a reactionary thing from being beaten in the cup final where we were going to win a treble. That was apparent as we went through the season. And this calendar year, as you guys have referenced already, around results whereby you would be shuffling the squad about because of European games and cup competitions and different things like that, injuries. What's been shown is that when we do that, when we don't have our optimum team out, more often than not, we will start to drop points. So that's a concern. We need to bring in better squad depth. So that was already highlighted as an issue. This only goes to highlight it even further. So, I mean, yes, some of those players will move on, but it's just the nature of it. But I also think what's happened will be used as fuel to kick us on again. And if it is going to be the manager's last year, he will want to go out with a bang.
Yeah, absolutely. You're saying, use the term there, that it will be used as fuel. Do you think for Callum McGregor, as much as anyone, he was absolutely devastated? You know, just it was a very emotional reaction. It's a new emotion for him because he just doesn't know how to lose at Hampden. I think his record going into the game was 13 senior trophies at Hampden, 13 won, 8 of them League Cups, and 5. Great maths here. Is it 13?
Aye, you're all right.
Don't doubt yourself, man. 5 Scottish
yourself.
Cups, and he'd also won 4 Youth Cup finals at Hampden. He just wins at that stadium, and obviously he was a key part of not winning in terms of the penalty, but he really took it in the chin, James. It was a real sore one for him.
It's a bit of a concern, yeah. I mean, I think that's a natural reaction, and you can see it in McGregor because he's your captain, he's your leader, and it's not that self-pity, self-involved emotion. It's that I've let down my teammates, I've let down the gaffer, I've let down the fans.
It was hard on sleeve, wasn't it?
Aye, I just as a character, I think he's phenomenal. But it's a worry that that can let doubt creep into his mind because he's thinking, am I starting to get to a certain stage in my career? Can I keep digging back into the well and get one more performance? Is it even just start off, where we need to be thinking a year or two ahead that he starts to phase that to someone else? Is there a signing that's required this summer to start to blend that and cover some of the games for him this season with a view to a year and a half, 2 years down the line, taking over from him? I don't know.
In his quotes, Paddy, he was saying similar to the terms that Miff was using, that he'll use this, and this will motivate him through the summer. And I think if we know Callum McGregor like we think we know him, in terms of the so many years that he's been at Celtic, I think he'll come back laser focused, and I think he'll have a KT alongside him as well as some others to keep him driven. I think Callum McGregor's time is, like everyone's football-wise, is finite. There's maybe less years ahead of them than behind them, but he's still got a couple of years left at this level, and I think you'll see a really driven, really focused Callum McGregor next time out.
Is this his first full summer off in a long time as well?
Aye,
it was last year. And,
nothing.
I think that'll be massive for him. I agree with James. I think that for me, maybe one full season left at the very top for Callum McGregor, and then being that big part of the player coming in to maybe take the jersey from him, he'll play a massive part. Same way you see me Lambert with Lennon, almost Lennon when you look at the young Scott Brown coming in as well. I think they played a part in helping each other out in those moments, and you look at the leaders that has always been in a Celtic midfield. I think at the moment, is that player there? I don't think so.
Is it Lennon Miller?
Not for me. No.
I'm quite excited and interested about Lennon Miller.
I'm not so sure, guys. Listen, I know there'll be plenty saying we've not seen enough of him, and I would be one of those people that I can't comment on everything, but I just think if we wanted him, we would have signed him by now.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe we tried from ML1.
Yeah, Miff, the Motherwell correspondent.
What a chat in January that was pretty much a done deal, but it's went very quiet.
It's so interesting. A lot of us will have watched Napoli on Friday night. Scott McTominay doing his thing, Billy Gilmore.
Don't rate him.
Scott McTominay?
I know. It's ridiculous.
What?
Why are you saying it then?
I know I'm wrong. that's like, yeah.
It's an incredible season.
Yeah.
12 league goals. Lukaku scored 14. McTominay scored 12.
I love him.
He's the absolute talisman of that
I
team.
love him.
And you seen him. There was a real bit of fanfare when they got presented with the trophy, and they just go daft for him. They really do. His goal was exceptional. He opened the score, and it was a proper number 9.
Bad for being useless by you.
It was like a Vialli type thing. It was a proper old school Italian number 9. A great finish. They absolutely love him. Now, Scott McTominay's a bit different. He's not like a guy who started his career up in Scotland at a Motherwell or St Mirren and we let him go. But the Lewis Ferguson example is a good one of a talent that was on our doorstep that we let go. We know all about John McGinn, but there's guys here, and I maintain there's a snobbery from Celtic. We see these guys, they can't be that good. And I think Motherwell are right to dig in, by the way. If they want to try and get 5, 6, 7 for him, then so be it. Celtic or otherwise should pay. But now your thoughts on that, Miff? Is he a guy that we should be considering?
It's a yes for me. He seems to have the lot, and I think the one thing that we clearly need in our midfield is more physicality, and I think he brings that.
Yeah, missing a bit of dig there. Paddy, what would be the final words that you would say that Liam Scales was talking about the manager wanting the group to be together? What would be his parting words to this group? As we kind of reflect on a double winning season, yes, but a hugely disappointing weekend there, culminating in Hampden on Saturday. What do you think that the tone would be to try and keep this group focused on the challenges which come around very quickly all over again?
Just remaining grounded. I think for those that are going to be here next season and still want to be a part of what Celtic's all about, they will be angry. They will take this as fuel for next season and try and go on a win and run and hopefully try and do a treble next year as well. Hopefully play well in Europe. But for those that are possibly thinking about moving on, they've been successful at Celtic, and if we do lose some of the Ange crew, for example, you thank them for everything that they've done as well. But there is an element of me that the cycle is we need some fresh faces in at Celtic.
Yeah, every squad needs freshen up, even if you're winning. Certainly when you're losing, you absolutely need to do it. But the time to do it is when you're on top, which Celtic are, and you're winning games of football.
Absolutely, and I think that's possibly the core message of them all being together last night, because there will be a few moving on this summer.
Yeah, there's no doubt. A couple of other bits and bobs of news. There's a new park being laid at Celtic Park, this kind of hybrid thing we've got, but it's been ripped up just now. You've maybe seen some pictures.
Are we going for the golden lawnmower next year?
Golden lawnmower.
Just can't be losing that title.
That one.
Can't be losing that
They made up an award for them.
Yeah,
They'll get a bus parade for it.
we must try and win that back. The other wee update is that Livy seem to be ditching their AstroTurf surface.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Martindale.
No, he's in with the bricks.
Big game tonight.
Big
game tonight.
So if Livy make it, and there's a good chance they will make it, was it one each after the first game? They might be back on track with a grass pitch. Would at least be something.
They're doing it in time for next year.
That's the chat.
Oh well,
I thought they were just replacing it with a new artificial one.
I mean,
5G.
That's 2G. That's most of my Livy gripes. Not all of them, but most of them is the pitch, or anyone who's got a
Sounds like Martindale might be the gripe.
Tell me he's your favourite. Come on.
My favourite?
He's not the worst, is he?
Rag.
He's not the worst.
No. I think he's done a remarkable job over numerous years. I don't know why, but I think your man Cowie's got a bit about him as well at Ross County.
Did you see him engaging with the fans?
Yeah.
I think he's
that was out of order. I think some clowns go to the football and think they can just say anything to guys on the sideline and guys in dugouts. And
well, funny enough, my just complete tangent. It's been a while for I've done this, lads. My boss was up, and he's wanting to tick off as many football grounds across the UK as possible. And it was the night of the Livy St Johnstone quarter final,
right?
And we went there and we got a chicken and haggis pie with peppercorn sauce, and it was fantastic. Best pie I've ever had.
At Livy?
Livy.
I've actually heard good things about their pies.
Get them back up.
It was absolutely fantastic. So I just thought to throw that in.
Back.
We've got some good pies up at Ross County, so I hope Ross County stay.
We'll be fully behind David Martindale and the boys tonight. They can get back up. No, it's been a kind of varied episode, obviously covering the disappointment, and there's no dressing it up. It is a disappointment on Saturday, but on reflection, it's a positive season all round, and as I say, we'll catch that. We'll have a bit of fun with it in the bag of cans end of season special.
Look at him
in a couple of weeks' time.
Oh, he's seething, isn't he? What a wee vein at the side of the heat like that.
Paddy, in the meantime, your own final thoughts for the week.
Listen, we as we've said, we can't win them all, but I do think that the players need to hold the mirror up after Saturday. A few of them just weren't at the races at all. Good reflection for our manager as well. I think that whether you've been out tactic or whether you've just not got the players up for the game, that's part of your responsibility as a manager as well. End of the season, a lot of reflection. As I say, I do think there'll be a lot of changes this summer, and just ready to kick on for next year. Can't wait to see Kieran Tierney back in the hoops.
Yeah, absolutely. James, your own final thoughts as Celtic settle for a double?
A bit of a shout out to a good friend of mine and yours, Martin O'Neill. Not that one. Martin is such a magnanimous chap. He likes to listen to the podcast and then dig you up on things you said throughout the season. So when I said
you're about to get dug up for several things.
When I said Schlupp was the signing of the season in January, I was like, I signed the season. I said Martin was quite happy to point out to me on Saturday after the game, so I need to put my Hands up to that one. Jeffrey, it could have been something different.
If it just been a wee bit lower with that shot, then it would have been a different conversation.
It was just about the same time Martin challenged me a conversation about Yang. I had to go to the toilet. That's the way these things go. Miff, your own final thoughts.
Well, quite often our disappointments are only temporary, and I hope that's the case here. We have manoeuvred ourselves as a football club into a magnificent position. We have strength, and if we need to go and buy, we can go and buy. We know we've got the reserves there to go and do it. I think now this much vaunted pre-season of spending, Tino's predicted record's been broken
Again.
all over the shop previously. James has been frothing at the mouth.
I'm more guarded.
A wee bit more guarded now. And Paddy, I know you're always in the track that we should be spending, we should be improving.
Yep.
But I think that time has now come, because not just because of that result against Aberdeen, but because of what was shown in the season and what can be achieved when you do invest a bit in the squad, and the fact that it took us to how close we got in Munich. I just think all the stars have aligned, and now is the time, because it's quite clear that what we can't be doing is falling further away from that Champions League format. So for me, as disappointing as the result was, I think there's now just an absolute focus on what's to come in the summer, and I'm really, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, there has to be, and it's that whole thing about, if you're not going to spend now, when are you? You know, it's all aligned, as you say. So let's see. So that's us for this latest episode of the Celtic Exchange Weekly. Thanks to the boys for joining me all throughout this season, and thanks to you all for your support. Even though Celtic are stopping, we aren't, and we've got a number of special episodes planned in the coming weeks, so keep an eye on our socials for updates on them. But until next time, have a brilliant week. We'll see you all again really soon.